Welcome back, and this is part 2 of the array modifier because I want to show you how to make this chain right here. So let's go ahead and get started. Do File, New, General, and again I'm using Blender 2.91 Alpha, and let's just go ahead and File, Save As. I'm just going to call it Array Chain Links because we're going to make a chain link. And let's go ahead and jump into Rendered EV View just to make it look a little more cool. And I'm just going to delete Suzanne. Goodbye, Suzanne. We don't need her for now. And on our flexible design here, let's create a new object. We'll do Shift A and we'll do a mesh that is a torus. So that's just going to bring us a tiny little chain here. It's almost hard to see. Let me hit period so you can kind of see here. Now let's just do like 5 for the major radius and maybe like 0.5. Let's see what that does. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it here. That needs a little thicker. So maybe like 1. Let's see what that does. That looks pretty good. So 5 and 1 millimeter for the major and minor radiuses. And let's rotate it on the X, maybe like 45 degrees. That looks good. And there we go. So now we've got a chain link, but it doesn't really look like a chain yet. So let's go into Tab and go into Edit Mode and maybe go to 7, go to our top view. And I'm going to turn on my point selection mode and do see-through, a little x-ray vision here. And I'm just going to grab these right here, not the center one, but everything up to the center, and hit G and X and just kind of extend it however long you want your chain to be. I'm just going to do something like that. There we go. Now we've got a chain. So if we come back, let's add a color to it just to make it a little more spicy. So I'm going to add a red chain. And now what we're going to do is just use the array modifier. So make sure you still have your torus selected. Let's rename it chain link because this is going to be our main chain link. And then let's add the array modifier. So array, bloop, and there we go. So now we've got it. It looks kind of cool, but it's not really doing what we want. We want the chain to be kind of interlinking here, or something like that. And I'm not going to use the relative offset. I'm going to use the constant offset down here. And let's just roll this out just a little bit, somewhere in there where we want our chains to kind of crisscross. So we'll just make it even 12. There we go. And what we can do is rotate. We need every other chain to be kind of the opposite 45 degrees. So to do that, we can do object offset, but we need an object just like before. So we'll do Shift A and we're going to create an empty object. So an empty plane axis, and notice it's right here in the center here. So we're going to go back to our array modifier, and for our object, you can just click and add that empty. And notice it's already kind of done it right there. So now what we want to do is take our empty, because the array is offsetting from this little object here, this empty object. We're going to rotate on the X. Let's see, negative 45, like that. And there we go. Now we've got interlinking chains. I kind of want my chain to be a little fatter, so I'm going to go into here, go to Edit Mode, select All, and we'll use our Shrink and Fatten tool. So let's just increase that a little bit, somewhere in there. I just want it to be a little easier to print, but you want to make sure, we still got some room. So I'm going to make it a little fatter, somewhere in there. That looks maybe like that. There we go. So now these are touching, so we need to go back to our little area here and adjust that. So maybe just do like 10. Boop. There we go. Now we've got interlinking chains. So now if we just increase the amount, we can make as many chains as we want. Looky there. And so now what we're going to do is I want to show you the caps because this is really cool, and you can get really creative with this. I'm going to go ahead and save. So let's duplicate this main chain link here. So I'm just hit Shift D and there it is here. Look at that. We got some crazy chains all over the place, but we don't need this array modifier on it. So just delete that array modifier. And now we've just got this simple chain here. And let's rename this and we'll call it Start because this is going to be the start of our chain. And let's go ahead and kind of just modify it a little bit. So make sure you have your start chain selected, hit Alt G. That's going to bring it back to the center. And I'm just going to grab it and push it back on the Y. We're just really using it for reference. We're going to hide it later. But for now, what we're going to do is use this to create something, some kind of new chain. So let's go back to our original chain, and for the caps, we want the start cap to be this guy here. So we'll click here and click on there, bloop, and notice a little chain appeared, but it doesn't look that cool because it just looks like every other chain. So what we can do is take our start chain and change it any way we want. So say if we wanted to, just select these guys here and maybe go into selection mode, hit G and X and just extend that. When we come back, notice here we've got our chain has extended on this end. And do note that if I did it the other way, it would actually mess it up because it's going off of this anchor point or the origin point here. So to show you the example, if I did the other side and did G and X and push that side out, when I tab back into edit mode, notice it's gone the other direction, and that's not what we want. So the origin point is very important when you're doing your start and your end caps here. So we'll hit G and X, just kind of extend that out. And so there is our start chain right here. So looky there. Now we've got our start chain, and now let's duplicate the start chain. Shift D, we've got a start, and we'll just slide it on the X, and it's going to come and be our end, or our end cap here. So we'll rename that end, bloop, like that. And if we go to our main chain here and go to our caps here at the bottom and do the eyedropper, we can select our end cap. And notice it's messed up right here. So what we need to do is fix this. So let's go to our end and hit tab to go into edit mode, and let's hit G and X to just move those back over somewhere in there. That looks pretty good. And maybe we'll select all of these, and I missed some down here. All of those, and hit G and X, and maybe make this one more circular. And now if we tab back into object mode, we've got a little ring, but notice we're kind of touching this one. So that means we need to come into this ring and kind of slide this edge a little bit more in. So I'm going to go into edit mode, grab the front of these and hit G and X and just bring those in ever so slightly, somewhere in there. And now we've got the space that we want right there. So the cool thing about this is if we turn these off, we don't really need those. Those are just reference geometry essentially. So now if we go to our main chain and change our fixed count, this is where it gets cool. Notice no matter which or how many chains we add to the count, our start and end cap are going to be linked to those chains. So, if I had a huge chain, let me bring it maybe a little too much, but somewhere in there, notice we still got our end and we still got our start. So that can be very powerful. We're going to add more to this once we learn about the curve modifier, but for now, this is just the basics of the array modifier and how powerful this tool can be. It's ridiculous. So hopefully your mind is already thinking of some cool effects, but for now, I'm just going to crank it down to maybe like 3, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe like 5, and actually might just do 4. There we go. So now we've got 4, and let's go ahead and get it ready for printing. So I've got my main chain selected, and we'll go to 3D print, check all, everything's zeroed out. That is great. And actually, before we do this, the bottom of these chains, there's not really a lot of surface area. So one thing I would suggest is maybe just chopping off just a little bit of the bottom of this chain. So we'll do Shift A to add a cube, and let's do like 50. See that? Maybe 100. We want it just as big as the chain, and we'll do GZ. Come to the bottom and make sure you have your cube selected and shift click on the chain and do Control minus. And there we go. We've chopped off the bottom, but we don't want it too much. That's a little extreme. So we'll do GZ, just bring it down. And what we're trying to do is just barely chop off the bottom of the chain here, something like that. So it's now we've got a little bit more surface area for the print to really get started, because we're going to 3D print these bad boys with no rafts, no supports, or maybe a raft, but definitely no supports, because we just want them to, appear. And since we're not breaking the 45-degree rule, we should have no problem 3D printing these and just pop them off the print bed and have a chain. So let's go ahead and export. make sure you have the chain selected. So this is just our little chain link here, and hit export. So now we've got our chain link brought in here, and check our settings. So maybe like a 0.2. We maybe can use some raft here. So I'm just going to do a little bit of raft, and let's slice it up. It's looking pretty good. So the cool thing is, like I was saying, it's just going to print these just like that, no supports, and just interlink with each other. This was one of the very first designs I ever saw my 3D printer make, and it blew my mind. So hopefully this is getting your mind super creative of really what you can do with interlinking designs that kind of 3D print around themselves. Super cool technique. And let's go ahead and print that thing.